On the 16th of June 2025, Peak was released on Steam. No marketing, no promo, just...
Come here, yummy.
If you are at all familiar with the gaming world, you've probably heard of Peak, the viral multiplayer climbing and bouldering game. Despite only being available for half the month, Peak became the highest selling game on Steam for the month of June. Its competitors in that month, such as Elden Ring Nightreign, had hundreds of millions of dollars in support, whereas Peak's developers had a budget of $200,000. And despite the gulf in funding, Peak was able to outsell its competitors 3 times over. So how does a game that no one knows about, that's released without any promo, become the most popular game in the world? To understand how Peak was able to succeed, we need to look back at how this game came to be. 2022, San Francisco hosted the annual Game Developers Conference, an event that brings together the game development community from across the world to exchange ideas, solve problems, and showcase projects across the industry. And 2 studios that were attending this event were Landfall Games and AgroCrab. Landfall is a Swedish independent video game developer and publisher. Founded in 2015 under the name Winnels Game Company, the studio had already developed and published many successful games. Their first game was titled Air Brawl, a free-to-play multiplayer airplane dogfighting game, released in 2014. And for a debut title, the studio hit the ground running, as they were nominated at the Swedish Game Awards the following year. Landfall would continue to develop and release new titles such as Cluster Truck, Nightfall: A Daring Journey, and the game they are arguably most known for, Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, or as it's more commonly known, TABS. The game sold 4.2 million copies across its lifetime. It currently has 77,000 reviews on Steam at overwhelmingly positive, and was recently rated the 27th best Steam game of all time. Now, AgroCrab is a more recent game studio. Founded in 2019, they had not yet seen the same success as Landfall. Their first game, Going Under, released in 2020. Although it did not reach a massive widespread audience, it was still seen as a successful debut. In 2022, while in development for their second game, Another Crab's Treasure, they would first meet the team of Landfall Games at the 2022 Game Developers Conference. Following the event, the 2 studios would remain in contact for the remainder of their own independent development cycles. In early 2024, the 2 studios would meet again in Landfall's HQ in Sweden. During that time, AgroCrab creative director Kaelan Rushby Pollock famously would first pitch the idea for Peak to Landfall while sharing a hot tub. And with a pitch as boldly presented as this, Landfall were excited by the possibility of collaborating with AgroCrab in the future. But before they could start to work together, each studio still had games in the pipeline they needed to release first. AgroCrab would finish and release Another Crab's Treasure in 2024. And according to Nick Kamen, the studio head and art director of AgroCrab, the development for their sophomore release was an intense 3-year-long project that burnt a lot of them out. In that same year, Landfall released Content Warning, which completely blew AgroCrab's game out of the water in both critical reception and sales. And it was this game that caught the attention of AgroCrab, not just because of the game itself, but the development of it. Because, miraculously, the entirety of Content Warning was created during a month-long Landfall game jam in Korea. It turned everything AgroCrab knew about game development upside down. So, having already developed a friendly relationship between the 2 studios since their first meeting in 2022, and having already pitched the idea for their new game to Landfall months earlier, AgroCrab reached out to ask if they could hop on that gravy train for a return trip the next year to Seoul, to which Landfall responded with a resounding yes. Because both teams had made strong connections years earlier, and both teams embraced a new approach to game development in hopes of creating the best game possible, they were able to lay the foundations for what would be both studios' biggest and most popular game they've ever made. So, In February of 2025, the teams of both Landfall Games and AgroCrab booked an Airbnb in Seoul, Korea, and for a month straight set out to create their new game, Peak. Now, although the idea had already been pitched, they hadn't yet finalized the outline for the new game. They knew they wanted to make an open world survival thingy, but they quickly got excited about being a group of lost scouts on an island, and the macabre slapstick that can come from that. The creative process wasn't all smooth sailing between the two studios. As stated by Nick Kamen, we knew we wanted to make a game about lost scouts, but there were so many directions the mechanics were being pulled in. We got into a few arguments on Discord, worried that if we didn't get it right, we would end up stuck in Korea, making a bad game we didn't really believe in. Luckily, after meeting up in Korea for the game jam, dynamics between the two teams clicked. We figured out that this is a game about freeform climbing and managing afflictions on your stamina bar. And this would be the core mechanic of what we now know as Peak. The story of Peak would be established fairly quickly. Players would act as lost scouts that find themselves on an unknown island after an airplane crash. Their only hope for escaping this place is to reach the top of the mountain to signal for help. During this month-long game jam, the core mechanics and the feel of the game would be developed. As already mentioned, the goal of the game was to climb mountains, with the win condition being to reach the peak. The player's health would be represented by the stamina bar. Climbing from one ledge to another would take away stamina from that bar, and stamina could only recharge when standing on a ledge. If the player's stamina ran out before reaching a ledge, they would take the fast track right back to the bottom. But stamina is not the only issue added by the developers that players had to face. Throughout their climbs, players would have to manage various afflictions that would decrease their available stamina. Players would throughout their climb develop hunger. If they fell from a great distance, they would be permanently injured, and if they stood on dangerous plants, they would be temporarily poisoned. To combat these afflictions, developers added various items that players could carry with them while climbing. Players could carry food, which when eaten would lower their hunger. Bandages and first aid kits were added to heal injuries, and the antidote item could be used to cure any poison damage. Players can find these items growing naturally from the environment, or in luggage cases that have been scattered across the map, dropped by the plane prior to the plane crash that brought the players to the island. However, carrying items in your inventory or in your backpack reduces your available stamina like any other affliction. Now, to ensure that the game had entertaining variety whilst still being challenging, the developers separated the climb into 5 different levels. Each level would be set in a unique environment, each with their own challenges. Shore is the first level where players will begin their climb after the plane crash, a fairly harmless beach-themed level. Tropics raises the difficulty dramatically, with more of a jungle theme to the environment. Spiked roots emerging from every surface and vines connecting ledges. After the recent major update, the third level can be one of 2 potential biomes: the ice-themed Alpine or the desert-themed Mesa. The Alpine's unique mechanic is its blizzard, where standing in the open during the blizzard will inflict frost damage. And the Mesa's unique mechanic is the sun, where standing in direct sunlight will inflict burn damage. The next level, Caldera, is a lava level. While not a level of climbing upwards, moving across from rock to rock surrounded by fluctuating lava can still prove challenging. And finally, the Kiln, the inside of the volcano at the end of Caldera. Reaching the top of the kiln rewards players with the peak, and climbing this final obstacle and lighting a flare completes the game. Now, although completing the game on your own is possible, it can be very difficult. But as intended in early development, the game is multiplayer, with up to 4 people climbing together in one run. In a multiplayer run, if one of your team members dies, then at the end of each level near the campfire is an ancient statue. Interacting with it will revive your teammates so you can all move on to the next level. The developers also added power-up items to help the players complete each level. Items such as the lollipop, the energy drink, rope launchers, and chain launchers help players set their own paths up the mountain. Additionally, players can find mythical items, either through ancient luggage cases in each level, or by interacting with the ancient statue if everyone survives the respective level. These mythical items have more unique effects. The cure-all will remove any affliction besides carrying weight. The Pandora's box will randomly change the afflictions of the player, and the Scoutmaster's bugle.
My screen's all weird.
By the end of the month-long game jam, the core of the game was finished. But in the 4 months that followed, developers from both Landfall and AggroCrab would continue to provide the finishing touches to the game to provide the most depth possible. And to keep the game fresh, the developers added a crucial feature. The mountains for each level are procedurally generated every 24 hours. So if players find routes up each level, they must use them to reach the peak before the time runs out. And when the world resets, all progress will be lost. But let's say a player does reach the peak. What would be their reward? Well, they will have earned a badge. Throughout the game, there are an array of badges that players can earn by completing various objectives within the game. From reaching the peak without taking fall damage, to playing a bugle for a capybara. And not only are these completed achievements visible on Steam, but each badge is displayed on the player's in-game sash. Additionally, with each achievement earned, players will receive an additional cosmetic item that they can customize with their character. And if players have completed every achievement and earned every badge, the developers added difficulty modifiers called ascents. These act as increased challenges for more experienced players. Through ascents 1 to 7, the added modifiers to climb become increasingly more difficult, from increasing fall damage to inflicting frost damage during night times. And if players can complete the climbs with these additional modifiers, the color of their character's sashes will change, finishing with a gold sash for completing the hardest difficulty of the game. With achievements to unlock, cosmetics to show off, and challenges to overcome, the developers took a simple game and added a level of depth that would keep players coming back for more. So after adding the finishing touches to the game and now reaching their target release date, the game was finally ready to go. The question now was, how are they going to put this game in front of the largest audience possible? This is a question that many game studios tackle. And the group that have set the standard for marketing practices in gaming is the AAA studio. In their attempts to market their products to the market at large, to be enjoyed by everyone, regardless of age or gender, over time they have devised key techniques that almost every other game studio on the planet has attempted to emulate. Now, the goal of any large marketing effort is to build up hype and interest for the release of a new game. We've seen many AAA studios release cinematic trailers. They've even scheduled time at the most popular gaming events to reveal new gameplay or footage from their new games. These techniques can work alongside a carefully planned social media campaign, which could include posting teasers or artwork on Instagram and eventually transitioning to themed merchandise. They can sponsor a popular content creator to play the game or invite journalists to review their game prior to release. And finally, studios may run traditional advertising on TikTok or YouTube. All these techniques are seen as key for studios with large advertising budgets to reach as many people as possible. But what if you don't have millions of dollars behind you to coordinate a large-scale marketing campaign? What if you're an indie developer trying to reach as many people as possible? Well, in their case, the strategy is a bit different. While many of the techniques are similar, such as releasing trailers and developing a social media marketing campaign, AAA studios focus on casting the widest net possible, whereas indie games are more targeted to one specific demographic. Many indie developers in the process of creating their game develop an idea of who they think would play their game, and targeting one specific audience is much more cost effective than having no target at all. An example provided by Campaign Cooperative's Aidan McGrath suggested that if an indie developer has identified their target demographic to be university students or office goers who could just complete a few levels of the game during their commute, a data-driven approach, i.e. running a social media ad campaign targeted towards these two groups in particular, would give you better results than simply running ads everywhere and hoping for the best. The data-driven, audience-specific approach is what most indie games use. So it's natural to assume, with both AggroCrab and Landfall being independent game studios, that they would use the same approach when marketing Peak, right? Well, they did have their target audience they wanted to reach. However, they didn't utilize these conventional methods. While both AAA and indie games use similar techniques and social media ad campaigns, Landfall and AggroCrab did something completely different. Something that was more effective than any other technique used in the gaming industry. There is a concept that has been written about extensively in the tech world that was first developed by Kevin Kelly, the founder of Wired magazine. Back in 2008, Kevin wrote an essay on his personal blog titled 1000 True Fans. The essay was centered around the concept that to be a successful creator, you don't need millions. You don't need millions of dollars or millions of customers, millions of clients, or millions of fans. To make a living as a creator, you need only thousands of true fans. Meaning, if you have a guarantee of around 1,000 people that are invested in you, that will buy and invest in whatever you create, you can be successful. While I'm doubtful as to whether either Landfall or AgroCrab have read this essay or even heard of Kevin Kelly, the idea of developing a strong community of people that are passionate about what you create is the basis on which both studios have marketed every single one of their games. Both Landfall and AgroCrab launched their own Discord servers with the launch of the studios themselves. With each game release, they encouraged people who played their games to join their Discord servers. Instead of trying to reach out to their target audience with ads, they brought their audience to them. Over time, both of their Discords grew in membership, where by 2024, they had each developed their own group of passionate fans that were ready to play any game they created. All it took from Landfall and AgroCrab was a post announcing their new game a week before release, coupled with a launch day discount of 38% off, and they generated all the hype they needed for Peak to become successful. But if that was the only marketing technique that they used, we wouldn't be sat here talking about it. What took Peak from selling thousands of copies to selling millions was the simplest and most effective marketing strategy in all of gaming. Landfall and AgroCrab made a great game. While they had a strong community of fans willing to play whatever game they made, the quality and entertainment value that Peak provided encouraged fans to share the game with people outside of the community. And those people would then tell their friends and then so on, to where the game became so popular that the biggest content creators are playing with their friends, showcasing the game to the world and transforming the game into the most popular game on Earth. And although this success is unprecedented, the developers were somewhat aware that going viral was a possibility. You only need to announce early to build up enough hype for that initial spark. But if you already know that you'll have that, then it's just up to whether the game is good enough to turn that spark into a raging campfire. We couldn't have predicted this insane of a response, of course. I think that the large launch discount and the inherent virality of the game also helped make it easy to convince your friends to all pick it up. While it feels like this game went viral out of nowhere, when looking back, the success of Peak was inevitable. You had two studios who were both willing to collaborate in equal partnership. They both loved to approach game development in unconventional ways to create the best game possible. And they both developed passionate audiences that recognize the love and passion they have for making games. Even as of writing this, they are still releasing new content for players to enjoy. So if there's anything that we can learn from the development and marketing of the viral sensation that is Peak, it is that if you are passionate about what you are creating and are determined to make it the best that it can be, people will notice, and it will only be a matter of time before the world can see it too.